alive! It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!
Hello and welcome to Alive After Reading. I'm Tim Niederreiter, and with me today is a guest who will be familiar to people who've listened to a few episodes of the other podcast on this whole here network of Mooks and Monsters. Welcome to the podcast, Isa McLaren.
Hi, Tim. Good to see you, or I guess hear you again.
Yes, it is a stealth podcast. It's all about the ears, no eyes in this one, no visuals. There will be no visuals. So
we'll just have to describe things well.
Yeah, exactly. It's all about vivid descriptions of, I don't know, people sitting in chairs. I mean, I assume you're sitting down. My chair is blue and circular, so it's kind of that you can take that image and do with it what you want.
Okay.
It's a weird chair. It's a weird chair indeed. So, Isa, what sort of stuff do you write? And introduce yourself a little bit.
I'm Isa McLaren. I write lighthearted crime fiction about a con artist and jewel thief named Jules Brand. My first book with him is called A Kiss for Luck. And in it, there's a young woman who wins a trip of a lifetime to Italy. And she goes and kisses a stranger on a bridge on impulse and has a whirlwind fling. But things get kind of tricky when she discovers he's a con artist because one of his former marks starts hunting them. And it's a wild romp through Italy and the Riviera, and it's a lot of fun. And the sequel to that, or the next book in the series, Keep the Mark Happy, comes out in May of 2020. And I'm like in the middle of pulling that all together, and I'm really excited about it.
Well, I like the title of that, especially the second one. Keep the Mark Happy.
Jules Brand lives by a set of rules.
Okay.
And the first rule that he lives by is keep the mark happy, because everything else falls into place after that. But that's going to be tricky in book 2 because he thinks he's found the perfect mark, but it turns out the guy is afraid of everything. He's afraid of germs. He's afraid of strangers. He's afraid of change, everything. And so Jules has to work really hard to keep this guy happy.
Oh, it's not easy to be happy when you're always scared, you know? I mean, it's a little bit tricky. Yeah, so you're writing lighthearted crime fiction for that. Is that basically your main milieu, your or whatever, your main genre?
I have another series that's still in the planning stages, and that one's going to be action and adventure. And there will eventually be a couple of crossover books between the two series. But yeah, action and crime, especially crime, that's my thing.
Well, nice. There's something really special, and I think we talked about this a little bit on the episode of Mooks and Monsters where you were on, but there's something very special to me about the caper. You know, that's a really cool subgenre. Yeah.
And I don't really like the really dark, gritty, gory, gruesome kind of crime fiction. Mm-hmm. I like you said, caper is a great word for it. It's a lot of fun. There's not a lot of violence in this. And as a con artist and jewel thief, he's, a white collar criminal. Nobody really gets hurt. And that's just kind of, you can play with the morality of it. It's really fun.
Yeah, it's kind of like those. There was a couple classic movies that come to mind. One from when I remember, very thoroughly. very enjoying a lot when I was younger. Was Ocean's 11. The remake actually, because that's the age I am.
Okay.
But I saw. I forget what the other one was called. The original. It was one of these other movies. There's been a remake of, but I cannot remember. I saw the black and white version, the original. I cannot for the life of me remember the name. But that was it was a great one. It was it ended with this somebody faking their death as part of the con. It was great. But so you thought the con artist got shot at the end, right? And then it's like, no, he planned all that from the beginning. It's all a trick. It was pretty fun. Great ending. But it's a
One
good
of
thing I
my
did. Oh,
favorite movies. It's an older one. It's called How to Steal a Million, with Peter O'Toole and Audrey Hepburn. And I actually ran a tabletop game based on that movie using the characters from my first book.
Oh, nice.
So that tells you how involved I get in things.
Yeah, I mean, I write a lot of because I do a lot of science fiction and fantasy. I make a lot of settings for RPGs based on my books, or vice versa. Really, books based off my RPGs. It's pretty normal too. Yeah, I do love a good RPG, and yeah, not exactly the subject of this show, but it is a terrific pastime, let's say.
It is, and that's how Jules Brand came into being. I created him for a video game.
Oh, nice.
And developed the character through role playing in the game with friends, and I was like, this guy needs to have a wider audience. He needs to come to life.
He needs to get out.
Yeah.
Of the game and get it. Yeah, nice. So, as far as your books go, did you have a particular process for creating the story? I mean, you say you ran a game based on the events of the first novel. What's the difference there? Between the game and the book.
Well, for one thing, the book is set in the real world, so there's no magic in it at all. And, almost all video games have a fantasy element to them. So that was a big difference. Another major element of the book came from my own personal desires. I mentioned that the female main character kisses a stranger on Ponte Vecchio, the bridge in Italy. That is something that has always been like a fantasy of mine. And so that sat in the back of my head, and I actually tried to write that story from that woman's perspective. And it just wasn't going anywhere. And then as these things happened in the middle of the night, I kind of woke up and went, oh, what if Jules was the lead in that story and this could still happen? And it just and that's sort of my process, is I wait until something clicks in my brain, and then there's no stopping it. I have to get this done.
Yeah, that what if though. That what if though is very powerful. Like, what if this character was in there? What if that thing? I mean, I remember Mike Stackpole on one of his old Secrets podcasts put this in a great way. It was, what if the obvious case is reversed? Is a really common, like, what if not? What if the woman who kisses the guy on the bridge is not the protagonist? What if it's the guy or whatever, whoever it may be? What if it's this con artist instead? That's a cool, and that kind of twist is, maybe it's not a total reversal, but the change it a little bit is a great way to develop stories.
Exactly. And most of that book was written during NaNoWriMo 2 years ago. And then, obviously Nano is first draft kind of thing, right? Mm-hmm. And it's only 50,000 words. And this kind of book, that's about half of what it should be. Yeah. But I mean, that Nano was so easy for me to do because it was like everything just came together in the right way.
Yeah,
so
happy birthday really to your book then.
Thank you.
Seeing as it's Nano right now as we talk.
That's right. November. And I am using that to push myself to work on this one, because it's getting down to the nitty gritty. It's like, how do I make this happen?
Yeah, writing a book in a timely fashion is kind of a challenge I'm diving into more and more often now. Since I started dictating over the summer, I'm now like, okay, I go fast through the rough draft, and then it takes me, about twice as long to do the edits. The rough draft gets so sloppy when I do it that way.
Well, yeah, but that's what rough drafts are for, right? The first draft is just telling yourself the story, and then each subsequent draft, And I can speak with some authority with this because I'm also the CEO of a publishing company, Three Furies Press.
Oh, so yeah, tell us about Three Furies. But yeah, go on. Yeah.
Three Furies, we're coming up on the end of our first year, not quite a year because we started in March of this year. But we've got all kinds of different kind of books. We've got horror, we've got paranormal, we've got sci-fi, we've got lots of fantasy, both high fantasy and urban fantasy, romance, crime fiction. So we kind of cover the gamut for that. And our prior the best it can be. So in that case, genre is not as important to us as the story. And we work with a lot of new authors and help them learn how, not just the process, the physical process of developing a book, but all the things behind the scenes, like the marketing of it and timing releases and things like that, and getting publicity for it. So we kind of teach them the process as we go.
Yeah. I mean, that makes sense. And I mean, authors like, I mean, I can't really disclose, but I was very thrilled recently to hear I'd be working with a developmental editor on a project. And I'm like, yeah, that's so cool. Because I never really have the money to, at this point, I haven't had the money yet to hire a developmental editor as a freelancer, because that's an expensive meatball.
It really is. Really
that's
is.
A spicy one. But it's a really useful thing, though, because there's so much you can learn from just a professional, right? Who can teach, as an author. There's just all these ways to level up that you're not you're not even aware of until you encounter somebody who's like, oh, yeah, by the way, you could do this. That would make it a lot better. I'm like, oh yeah, wow. And if they've got the experience and they know what they're saying, what they're doing, it really works. You're really useful.
Yeah, even, famous best-selling authors still work with developmental editors. It's not, I mean, everybody needs the line edit and the copy edit, right, to look for the mistakes and to make sure the grammar and tense is correct. But even the big names still work with developmental editors, which, in case anybody doesn't know, they help you develop the story. They make sure there's no plot holes, that there's no characters who could maybe be consolidated down into one character, or making sure the point of view doesn't stray from what you're intending, that sort of thing. So they work kind of with the nuts and bolts of the story as opposed to the nuts and bolts of the actual words and sentences.
Right, yeah. Yeah, so and it's important to note here that these different phases of editing, I mean, some of them are kind of optional, but most of them but they're all beneficial, right? That's kind of the thing. Like, if you indie authors, I as an indie author, I'll speak for myself, let's say, instead of speaking for other people. I would say I've cut corners here and there at times, but just to save costs, right? Like, I'm not able to afford the developmental editor.
Right. And for those indie authors who can't, afford a developmental editor, beta readers are great for that. Yep. And, sending it out to people you trust and getting their feedback on it. Working with writing groups can give you good developmental ideas for that too. So there are ways to make it less expensive if money is an issue, if you're not working with a publisher. But none of it's optional. I mean, if anything, the developmental
there's
editing,
different ways
to work around it. Yeah. But
I mean, definitely the proofread I would consider mandatory, especially the copy edits and proofread.
And it's not something really an author can do themselves, because you wrote the story. You're gonna not notice the words if you've left out a word in a sentence. You know what it says, so you just skim right over that.
Yeah, and even automated checkers can only go so far, like Grammarly and those. I do like them, but they're not the be all end all, and they can't replace a good human eye.
Exactly. They're not going to know the difference between there, as in there it is, and their gramophone.
Yeah, the homophone stuff.
Yeah.
So Yeah. Anyway, I mean, I gotta say, it sounds like your books are quite intriguing. But have you written other books that are not published at this point, or are you relatively new to the whole authoring career?
I'm fairly new to the authoring career. I have published a couple of short stories, but those are also with Jules Brand. I
Okay.
think I have out in the world. And then I have a free, really short story that sort of sets up book two. It's kind of tells about one of the characters in book two.
Oh, nice. Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, I'm still fairly new to it.
Well, that's great. I mean, it's actually kind of cool. I kind of wish I had. I started writing books when I was quite young at that point. I mean, I wouldn't say very young, but 14. It's pretty young.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, and I wrote a book every year for a while there. So I have quite a few now. But the thing is, it's like getting that magic of, and I've actually thought about it recently. It's like, wow, would I have been better off waiting and just studying more before I started? I don't know, because I really like having the amount of experience I have. It's really nice. But on the other hand, there's a certain amount of, the books I created weren't all that useful to me now, because most of them aren't that good, is the problem with those early books,
I disagree. I think I did a lot of short story writing in high school and college. I was an English major too. So I've also written the really dry nonfiction stuff too.
Hey, me too.
But every time you write something, you learn from it. Even at age 14, you're learning things. You decide you like this kind of story for the reasons that are valid when you're 14. And then perhaps, 5 years later, you take up that same style and it's not working anymore, but you still have what you learned before to build on. There's so many different ways to become a writer, and none of them are right or wrong. Well, I could probably think of some wrong ways, but but I think any writing, and it also is a great emotional release, right? You have these stories in your head, at least I do. And if I don't get them out and get them down, they stay in my head and plague me. So
I agree. Yeah.
It's very cathartic, if nothing else.
Yeah, I suppose. I mean, and back then I noticed that especially. I guess the part of the magic part is like, well, discovering the sort of thing as an adult, it would just be a much different experience, I guess is what I'm saying. Discovering the craft as an adult. I can imagine it being, I don't know, maybe, I guess probably it would be scarier though, because as a kid, you don't realize the things you could get wrong, the mistakes you're going to make. You don't have any idea what's going to happen. And it makes it easier because you're confident, because you're like, oh, I never screwed up that bad in my life. It can't be that bad. How bad can a book be? It turns out pretty bad, but pretty useful too, in a sense of you learn a lot. Yeah, I agree for sure. So as we're gonna wind down a little bit here. So where can people find your work and your sites and stuff?
My website crashed, so it's down right now. But you can find my books actually at any retailer, but we have our own site for our company. It's called threefuriespress.com. We're actually going to be running a Black Friday sale, so check Facebook and Twitter for ads there, so you can get the promo code that gets you $5 off a purchase of $25 or more. On Twitter, I'm IW McLaren, and Isa McLaren on Facebook.
Wonderful. Thanks for being on the show, Isa.
Thanks a lot, Tim.
Well, as for this podcast, you can find more of us at mentalcellarpublications.com. You can find my books at amazon.com. And yeah, I'm gonna cut it a little short as far as my plugs this week, because I've run out of steam. I think it's very late as I record this, and I'm entering a bit of a delirium. So thanks for listening, everybody. Thanks for being on the show, Isa. See you next week, folks.
That tears it.